Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good to be back with you. Mike Fairborn here for our swing trading class. And I hope you've been having some fun out there swing trading. And we do discuss a number of different ways to paper trade that short-term time frame. We're really trying to get everything working over a 3 to 15 day period of time in one direction, either up or down. So plenty to look at today. And I wanted to focus in on really kind of the movers within the Magnificent Seven. They're so heavily weighted, and they comprise such a huge component of a lot of the major market indices. And so I wanted to drill down into those today, talk about that into more detail. Welcome, folks, to each of you here. Good to be back with you. Chris, we've got Hope. Hello to you, Sharon, as well as Robert and JD. Good to have you guys on board. I'm joined in the chat by a good friend of mine, a 30-year veteran of the markets. That would be Ben Watson. You'll see him in the chat as BW right there, folks. You can follow him on X, which I encourage you to do. He's got some great stuff up there. It's always interesting to see Ben's X posts because you can see where he's been traveling, and he does go on a fair number of trips. Well, I should say they're not really trips, are they? Oh, they're work trips for sure. I almost want to say vacations because he has such a great time out there with you guys. But yeah, and by the way, you can follow me on X, Mike Fairborn CS as well. Well, on that note, hey, there's some things to look at maybe at the Mag 7 level. We're going to do some reviews of what we previously done, but it is great to have you all here. Looking forward to our discussion. Let's dive into some disclosures to get going here. Information here is for general information purposes only. Now, options do carry a high level of risk. They're not suitable for all investors. Short options can be assigned at any time up to expiration, regardless of the in-the-money amount. An ITM option does have a higher risk of being assigned early. A short put does risk purchasing the underlying stock at the strike price when the market price of the stock will likely be higher. Paper money software application for educational purposes only. Investing does involve risk, including the loss of principal, and there is no guarantee that execution of a stop order will be at or near the stop price. Now, past performance is no guarantee of future results, and dividends are not guaranteed. All right, and welcome to Josh Reisberg and David as well joining us. Great to have you guys here, as well as Bill. Will, sorry. Howdy to you, Will. Good to have you on board. I saw Will earlier this morning as well, many of you in some of the other classes. I did a couple of different chats. In fact, I did one for Ben this morning as well. By the way, a quick note just here on futures. That's right, our secondary slide here. But just a quick note, futures options trading does involve, futures options trading does involve substantial risk, not suitable for all investors. Okay, we're done there. A quick glance at what we look at here. That time frame that I just mentioned to you is located on this chart. We look at it all the time here, but it's always a good refresher because, it is at the end of the day kind of a bull flag. And we do find a lot of price patterns in these swing trade time frame scenarios, right? Over the 3 to 15 plus days, I've actually said, hey, that's market days. So it's about 21, 22 market days in a month. So a lot of times it could be up to a month for some traders, but they're really, folks, just looking at these types of moves right there, where maybe everything lines up and you're getting really an explosive move to the upside. Some traders will look at stocks there. They might look at options as well. Okay, it can go up, it can go down, upside, downside. We look at both over here within this class. But right now, what I wanted to look at was maybe just a quick glance at the market. I did send out an X post. I don't know if you guys caught it, but it was just kind of a general scenario. Will we run up towards the end of the year or not? There's a tendency for us to do so. Super quick glance at seasonality if you haven't seen it before, but that's this move right here. There's your 5-year. I'm just going to flip it to a 10. Shoot, I can go to a 20, whatever the case might be. It's going to put price a lot lower on the chart though, isn't it? So I'm going to go ahead and just adjust on my price axis here. Make sure things are more comparable. And you can see that year-end drift higher. Sometimes you get stronger years. It really does just depend. But will we get that? And we've been talking a lot about, as I pull back to my regular chart mode here under standard, let's pull back and let's just see. This does, if we were to say this scenario could unfold. Oh, let me go ahead and just take back again. Put us back to our regular chart that is not percentage based, but just price based. There we go. That gets our our y-axis to line up correctly. But you'll notice over here, we do talk a lot about patterns in this class, and this could be very similar to a possible flag pattern as well. So there may in fact be a flag pattern potential lift over here. That remains to be seen. Do we get that lift or do we not? But it is interesting to see that that is what we're kind of getting in the markets right now. Okay. And with that, what could really move the market over here? Well, if we go ahead and take a look at the Market Watch tab, I've got over here, I wanted to show you guys actually under the Visualize section, just to show you the S&P 500. Folks, it is market weighted. In other words, the market weighting of these companies over here. Yeah, AVGO is in there as well, very big block. You can see this is the impact. By the way, if you take these two together, yeah, Google has a pretty big move potential in the market, right? Pretty big. I mean, you're getting a couple of different class shares in there. You've got Meta, got Tesla, you've got Amazon in there. It's looking a little familiar, like the Mag 7. Well, these can be movers and shakers, and there's a number of different areas we can look at as we look at the mags specifically. We're going to dive into this in more detail, but they can move it, and interestingly enough, some of those might be actually positioned like the market, because we want to be looking at those potential movers today. Okay, so with that though, we have to look back and see how we've been doing with our a review of some trades. So we'll just look at 3 of these that we've had previously from past week. And what I wanted to do was just highlight, I'll push these guys down here so you can really see the charts. But this is Delta Airlines. And you can see over here, Delta, it's so interesting because with Delta, we have like actually our target is literally like right here. It's just right, that's our target range. If we were looking for a longer term flag that we'd kind of talked about previously. In fact, what we were doing is actually measuring like this move to this move. And we just said, we're going to overlay that over here and kind of like a longer term sort of a flag pattern. It's sort of a measured move, folks. It's a combination of a bit of a measured move as well as a flag type move. The measured move portion of it might be right in here. Look at the previous lows. Look at the previous highs. We take this range here, okay, and we add that to the upside, and we get just about there, which is almost where our flag is. It's very, very close. So we have not yet taken our paper money and run with this trade because we're just about there. And I've been watching this, but there you have it, right up to that point there. So here's the question. We're right there. We're kind of sitting in a sideways range. What do we do on this stock? There's our trade right now, just sitting about under 500. We're up about 5 points because we just put 100 shares on, which we do oftentimes in this class, just a general round lot. But that was the breakout move that we'd seen basically right over here. Yeah, 62 to about 67. You guys remember that breakout trade that we took? So right up here. The question we might want to ask ourselves is this. Are we going to create another little flag over here and then break up higher? So that is the question. Do we stick with the trade at this point, or are we running into a little bit of resistance? And these are the questions we do need to ask ourselves. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just send out a quick poll question because I'm very curious as to what you guys might do in this situation. Try to get normally at least 30 responses so we can get like in a decent size sample of the population. Generally, 30 is a number people will look at in statistics. So I'm just gonna put this down here. Quickly throw this in. Okay, there we go. So I threw it in. While we're talking about that too, there is one other thing we can do if we did decide to hold a position on this. Excuse me, if we decided to sell. If somebody did decide to take the paper money profits and run, what they could do is they could, let's say, they go minus 100 here, right? Now, where else might there be an entry point? Tell you where it could be. You guys, we've seen this before. In fact, this was our original entry on the trade. I just take this level here and move it back down to here. was that? That was a breakout above resistance. This is a shorter term move, but this is all like in positive territory here. This is a break into a new high range. And could we extend out of this flag pattern here? There's a couple of different ways to look at it. Some traders would even just say, Mike, you know what? Just cut 50 out. Just take 50 out. We'll knock this down to 50 shares. And then if it breaks out, I add the other 50 in. See how there's a lot of different possibilities here. But let's go ahead and see what you guys have got. And by the way, we might, if we take the money and run, we might just set an alert in place to notify us about a potential entry coming forward. So I'm going to go ahead and in 3 seconds, I'm going to end that poll. If you'd like to vote, 2, 1. Okay, I think we got it here. And what did we do? So we had 40. Excellent. Thank you, guys. We got past our 30 votes. Give us a certain amount. And there you have it. So I would say take the paper money run. We'll go ahead and do that on our trade. We'll harvest those profits in right now, those paper money profits off of the table on this breakout. But remember, for those that are holding, yeah, you might be looking for the possibility of an extension here, and this being just a mini kind of a flag pattern here. Formation, right? Because it is quite strong. It's holding its range. And the one thing I will say too, I've got to say this, is if you look at the commodity itself, that would be the futures contract. That is the light sweet crude oil futures contract here. Folks, what do you say? Wow. It looks like one of those phases of the VIX, right? Or it just dips down for a long period of time. For consumers, and let me just say this, for big transport companies like DAL, UAL, AAL, it could be construed as a positive because the two key inputs into input costs are labor and jet fuel prices. So there you go. All right. Saw an interesting documentary on jet fuel recently, how they test the fuel on the wings before the plane takes off. I had no idea that the jet fuel is actually blue. It's a bluish tint to it. It's interesting. Total side note. Let's get back to Delta here. But it's that I was just still thinking about that. Okay, so here you go. Okay, here we are. Let's take this off of the table, and I'm simply just going to go over here into my active trader, real easy, and we'll close it out real close to 500 over here. And what we're going to do is we could just say flatten. It's as simple as that. I'm going to flatten that position, and there we go. 26 on the day, and you guys saw the total profits. Okay, we had another similar position to this GEHC. It wasn't quite as strong, but then you can say, because we pulled back yesterday, it's in a totally different group. And by the way, this healthcare is holding up better than a lot of other healthcare stocks, which are down today. GEHC, very, very similar to DAL, folks, in terms of, yeah, we went all the way back over there. That is right. Similar to this breakout right there, the breakout and the potential rally. This was a couple of different scenarios on those breakouts. We have a measured move range we could use right here. We just take this range, which is about 10 points, and we can add that up to this point. You know what else comes up to that 10-point range? Interestingly, flag pattern right there. See the move up? We take that distance in price, and we started off of, that's right, the bottom, and the bottom starts here. Where does it put us at? Very, very, very close to 90. So it's kind of steady as she goes right now with this stock. One thing that some traders might do, I'm going to take this guy off, and what I'll do is just activate it, pull it over here, so you can see where that target comes in at near 90. All right, and what I was going to do is just show you all that a move up to this level, oh wow, I just saw this. This doesn't have to unfold, but sometimes this can be helpful too. You guys see this? I'm just kind of eyeballing it. It looks similar. Look at that. See that little mini flag? Look at the measurement of the mini flag. Take this distance here. I'm just going to eyeball this too. You see it? A lot of times you get a mini flag that fits in the middle, folks, and what you end up getting is a second measurement technique for your target to the upside. So I will say this. I will say steady as she goes right now. We'll stick with this because ultimately it is going in that direction. So this is maybe leaning more towards less so the 3 days and closer to within a month's time frame for a general rally over here. That's not 1 minute, that's 1 month over here. By the way, too, look at this. This is interesting. See that little candle? These candles are fascinating because sometimes they represent a pause, but then notice over here. Do you guys recognize that one? That is an engulfing pattern. Engulfing pattern. David says you don't want water in your jet fuel. Yeah. Yeah, you do not. You don't want to be up, 30,000 feet with water in your jet fuel. Absolutely. They test it. That's exactly right. Okay. So, yeah, water's not good in any engine, right? I had to probably my John Deere and it had water in it. And boy, I had to have a guy come out and fix it. He did fix it, which was great. He said, I can't guarantee you anything. Boy, he got it running better than ever. But that thing was like the stickiest sort of gasoline because it had water in it. Guy was crazy, but he fixed it. Wow. Anyhow, I gave you guys some time to think about this one. This here is an engulfing pattern. Do you see it? Right there. And that means that the next range the range of the next bar is going to fit inside. I'm going to put it red because that's exactly what it was. Right there. It fit inside it. Do you guys see it? It was a colored bar right there. Right there. Right there. And that oftentimes means pause. But you notice what we're getting after that? We're getting another inside bar or Harami pattern right there as well. And that can mean just that, hey, maybe it could be time for a pause. So this is very interesting. We'll see what happens on a move like this, but this is certainly steady as she goes here. Let's hit one more. There's a little bit more to say about BG. Now, BG was one of these moves that ran up. It's down about 73. And by the way, that's kind of been the theme this week as I was watching GD. It's just like down, down, and down. And so you've just been losing it pretty much from 95 this week on down. Well, even going into last week from these highs, 97, and here we're down at 91. So prices have been dipping on BG. Now, this was the soybean kind of trade that we were looking at, and this was just a really explosive move and a dip down here. Kind of like a long-term sort of potential flag pattern here that we saw as well. Quick note on this, folks, it does have the possibility of a shoulder, head, shoulder right there, inverted, of course. That's an inverted head and shoulders pattern, just the opposite of what you might see up here. But we're getting dang close to breaking below that head, the head portion. And guess what? That's exactly why I'm going to go ahead and just place that alert right there. Because, I mean, we're just right there. And if you start to break below that, it doesn't mean that it can't go back up. But a lot of traders will say that it could be like this, break down, question mark. Okay, and by the way, if you guys are using this to send out the mobile to you, just make sure that down below you got the notify with. I'll scroll down so you can see it, but you've got it sent to your mobile devices. Okay, click create. We're so close, but sometimes, it can turn. We shall see, but yep, we're just about there on a potential exit on this potential trade, on this paper trade as well. This was interesting. Little side note, because I've been watching this. It's one of these that we've got in here. Soybeans. Here are the soybeans, and looks very similar, right? There's your soybeans gap. Now, we talked about the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, coming in and saying, we've made China a commitment there. Well, we haven't made them, but they've agreed to a commitment. I want to say 87, don't quote me on this, 87 million metric tons, MMTs, over a 3-year time frame. And they should be close to that. They said that they'll at least hit it by February. Okay, they're on target to hit that number by February. They're a little bit behind right now. But anyways, it's a political government type of agreement. If China's not happy with other areas of tariffs, folks, they could cancel that real quick. We don't know what could happen there, right? So it's one of those scenarios that could unfold. And by the way, I just looked just a few days ago too, just looking at news on soybeans. Scott Bessent just sold all of his soybean acres and acres of soybean farms. So you have to say this, just generally speaking, the announcement came in, soybeans went up, and somebody sold soybeans. Now, does that mean they're going to go down here? No. Does it mean they're going to go up here? No. Could go either direction, but one thing we can say for sure is soybeans went up and somebody sold their farms. and somebody that was in charge of, of making the agreement. So anyways, that news might have been impacted probably right around there. You got the three soldiers down, though, which is a candlestick pattern that I learned a long time ago. In fact, there it is. There's your three. Pause, and there's your next three. And sometimes you get a bounce after that, but you don't have to. But sometimes you do. Kind of like this. And this sometimes. Well, close to it. Anyhow, okay. So we're very, very close to the possibility of an exit on that one, folks. Let's move on now into... Oh, one quick note. I did state this over here, too. I said with the initial trade... Oh, that's not / DAL. That's just DAL. I'm going to go ahead for... we did exit this position, but I said, hey, there's the possibility of getting back in. But you know, as I look at this, back on DAL, I know we're stepping, back here a little bit to take a look at it. But for maybe an interesting reason, could there be just a little bit slightly higher overhead, too, that the take the paper money crowd might have been actually factoring in? Yes, it might be. Real close to 70. So you know where I'm going to set that alert at? Right abouts there. So I'm just going to say, just notify me about here. Actually, you know what? Notify me in this range and I can keep a closer tab on it. So I'm going to go ahead and create this alert right there. I'm just going to say breakout, question mark right there. Okay. So we can have that parked in the back of our mind. Maybe we can be notified just a little teeny bit earlier if that's the case. So a quick note too on alerts, just as a side note so you guys know, although I didn't mention a specific time, alerts are not guaranteed to be delivered. They're not guaranteed to be delivered or delivered at a specific speed or time frame, and should not be used as a replacement for actively being aware of your positions and the market activity surrounding them. So just a quick note on that. There is some technology obviously involved in getting those out to you. I just wanted you to be aware of that. All right. Well, it is time for us to move forward into our discussion here. We talked about this market weighting. It's just so big on the Mag 7. And to be mindful of it, look at some of the performers in the Mag 7. This is just my X account right here. I sent this out just for you guys as I look through this. But this is what I had, in terms of year-to-date performance using this Thinkorswim tool, which is really, really nice right there. Percent year-to-date change. You can see the winners over here. Every one of them is in the positive. Now, some have been sideways, but they're still up. But you can see the clear winners up top here, really tying into, you have to say the semiconductor portion of this group. Now, are these the best positioned going forward? Let's take a look at those swing charts right now and dive into this in a little bit more detail. But I'm going to go ahead and just clear that off if you guys want to take a look at that, or some of the columns that we've got over here. Yeah, I'd love to have you, I put it on here so you can utilize it if you're interested. But that is my X account right there. Be sure to follow Ben too, Ben Watson CS. All right. So with that, let's dive on back over into our other scenarios and setups. And I want to talk to a little bit about what makes the Mag 7 list of stocks somewhat unique to the market. Why were they chosen in the first place? What's going on there? They were chosen quite a while ago, but the performance continued after, they'd been chosen to be some of the groups of companies to keep an eye on. But as we look at these companies here, and we looked at them kind of big picture here, you'll notice that, well, these are really well-recognized names, right? First of all, and there are a lot of emotional narratives for companies that have a brand that people have used. And, if they see a good brand, sometimes they like the brand and they buy into it. You have to say, too, with it, growth is clearly going to be a factor. They've had historical growth, leadership within groups, semiconductors, other areas that are in here. They tend to be leaders, and sometimes they can be, they might have healthy growth prospects. A lot of times to get companies up to these levels that we've seen, let's just take a look at Google over here, or Alphabet, it wasn't, negative performance that helped drive these companies over a long period of time. They've been performers within that group, and that can be really quite interesting. And by the way, heavy into innovation as well. A lot of times they could do that because they tend to have good balance sheets, right? They have good sources of revenue, and they just keep reinvesting that into R&D. So those are key factors and characteristics as to why they could be of interest in the first place. Let's take a look just initially here in alphabetical order, looking at each of these. Here is your Mag 7 list of stocks. Now, there is Apple right here. Now, one thing you'll notice with Apple, kind of tied into the market, and the fact that it could play a key role in the markets breaking higher as well. What are these companies doing? Because they comprise so much of the potential movement of the market, up or down, just based upon their market weighting, right? If we look over here, this looks a little bit similar. It was up a little bit earlier today, but here you go. Sideways. You guys tell me if you notice anything here. Move up. I don't know. There's quite a few of these in here, but this is how a lot of strong trends will move, and they kind of move in that bull flaggish type of motion. So here we are over here on Apple, and you'll notice something about it too. It's resting right at support. So this could be an interesting time to maybe, if we were looking at it, let's just say we were looking at starting, it's a little bit higher price stock, but if we wanted to start a position on Apple and thinking that, well, we've kind of died a little bit, pulling back, at least the volumes have, right? That's one other key element too, I failed to mention, is that the liquidity can be very, very strong here. And you can get a number of just institutional ownership within these companies, of course, right? In a lot of cases, right? Because these companies, you'll find them in a number of different, let's say, different funds that are out there. Perhaps different institutions own them. So there's a lot of liquidity. But speaking of that liquidity, look at that dip. And that's kind of what you like to see. You like to see that get a little bit lighter as prices come down and maybe start to slow down or even stop. We don't know if it'll stop, but maybe hold that area. So what I wanted to do was just pull this back over here, and I will go full screen and just start a stock position here at 25 shares. If we get, because we haven't got it yet, but if we get something that, folks, you're just going to have to get in order for prices to go higher, and that is a hold, a close above the high of the low bar over the range. In fact, I'm sorry, this was actually it right there, a little bit earlier, right? So you get some of these coming earlier, but we're just looking for a little bit of confirmation, and maybe that's enough to add in the additional plus 25 after the hold, or a form of shorter term price confirmation is what the way some traders would look at it. Because remember, what is ultimately happening when we take out this high over here? All right, it's time for me to zoom on in to the 30-minute chart. But if we're saying this is a low, and let's see, this was the high of the low bar, right? Using 30-minute bars here, it gets a little hairy because we've got these after hours grayed out areas, but that's our high. And what is it telling us? On a daily hold, that is a close above the high of the low day. I used to call it K-hold until James Boyd quickly corrected me. He says it's hold. So there we go. It's a hold pattern. Whatever it is, it's a close above the high of the low day, whatever way you want to say it. But there you have it right there. Right above that high range right there. Okay. Yeah. James was the guy that I first heard talk about the holds. I thought that's an interesting way, and it's an interesting point too. But notice what you're doing. You're taking out the highs, folks. And that would be a breakout above that level. Now, talking or listening to Ben's discussion this morning, as he looked at some of his future stuff, he looks at different price ranges frequently above highs and lows. And if you guys are into that shorter term time frame trading, which Ben will look at frequently, I encourage you to take a look at his futures class, which is on the same day as my swing trade. It's just the first class of the day. So just wanted to bring that up to everybody. Teaches a great class there. Now, and I know he does because I do the chat for him. All right. Well, with that, let's start this off with a 25. The question is is, are we okay maybe putting a stop below this level, about 275? So below this range. And by the way, the fact that we're not adding in 50, we're adding in 25 to start off with. If it did go south and continued to consolidate further, maybe there wouldn't be as much at stake if we were to get out of that trade close to the stop level, for example. Okay, so I'm just going to put this down here. I'm going to put our target, though. We're going to do an OCO bracket order on this, and we're going to say that this is our flag. In fact, let's make it more accurate. I'm not going to use the drawing tools. I'm going to use the Thinkorswim drawing tools, not my side software here. So I'm going to click, pull this guy up to the high. Good quick way to do it, and then just right click and activate. I'm going to pull this all the way over to that potential low. We don't know if that's going to be the low, but then it's going to be right around 300. So 275, 300, right around that big round number where sometimes we might find support or resistance. Case in point, look at this. 200 right there. There's another 100 higher. Could be resistance at that level. In other words, we could be closer to a longer term resistance if prices were to hold at that point. All right, let's go into our trade tab and get this going again. Apple, I'm going to right click instead of just left click here. That pulls up my buy custom that I can scroll down to right on top. This is, remember, a top side potential exit level right at that, near that point, as well as this one, or near the point that we're looking at, or they're just not guaranteed to execute at those levels. Liquidity can help to get you quite close, though, to where the actual exit may be. We talked about this just in our disclosure initially. In fact, I'll just hit that again just so where everybody's on the same page. Let's see, under our stop orders, just because you might not be familiar with it, there's no guarantee that the execution of a stop order will be at or near the stop price. Okay, but as I said, liquidity can be a very, very beneficial factor to get that close. You guys, many of you probably use those. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is link this up to a 25 share position across the board. Next thing, just like clockwork, I want to make sure that these potential exit orders do not get executed. The limit and stop order, those points, right? That they don't get executed. They don't fall, I should say, don't fall off at the end of the day. They're not day orders. They're good till cancel orders. Let's set our upper target just below. I'm going to go 299. We can always adjust this later if we wanted to. And the stop order is going to be right at that 275 that I was looking at. Folks, feel free to adjust these. We're just putting in some broad sort of general areas here. Let's go ahead and click on confirm and send. And there we go. We started our position. Now remember, I'm going to add 50 to it with if a hold does unfold today or tomorrow. Ooh, can't see that too well. There you go. Right there. And the hold would be a close above the high of the low day, low day, low day. There's your low day thus far. And once we've put that low day in place, folks, we're simply just going to go over here and we're going to draw a line there and say, oh yeah, close above there. That would be the hold. Okay, you guys got it. Cool. All right. Ben's got us covered in the chat. Looks like we're doing good. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, let's go on down our list. By the way, a little side note, I've got to show you guys this. This is such a cool feature of the platform if you don't have it yet. If I wanted to look at a basket of what all these look like combined, we have that capability right here on the platform. Just do this, AAPL plus AMZN plus Google, before the L, Google plus Meta plus MSFT plus Tesla, and number 7, NVIDIA right there. So what do we have? By the way, those are not in alphabetical order, are they? T should be at the bottom. All right. There you go. It's okay though, but that is what collectively the Mag 7 look like. Isn't that cool? So you can take a look at it and say, gosh, it doesn't look as bullish as Apple. It doesn't look as bullish as Apple, but it doesn't look as bearish as, let's say, maybe NVIDIA or Tesla. But you can see it's holding right here, And look at this, pull back, come up here, and okay, volume collectively slowing down, and the possibility of a bounce there for a flag pattern. But it's just great to be able to see everything together. You've got that capability right on the platform. Let's go to Amazon now and take a look at Amazon. So here's an interesting thing with Amazon. Amazon has, it did make a new high. It made a new high on earnings. And so the market responded very, very strongly to the earnings announcement here, as you can see. Now, we did sell off, and there were some sell-offs in the general market, but folks, it did make a higher high and a higher low relative to the prior low. Here's your move up. This could be, this is like within this trading range, it's a lower high here. This could be a higher low, and maybe it could start to get going as well. Let's put on another position here with Amazon, just to see what we've got. But here's the thing I wanted to do. As we look at Amazon, well, let's do this. Yeah, so Amazon prices coming down here. The thing you got to say with Amazon, it's had a very, very strong money flow too over here. Look at the money flow. MF looking for the possibility of an extension, accumulation in buyers relative to sellers, folks. This is clearly a lower high right here. Do you see it? Clearly lower than the prior high. But look at that. Money flow, in other words, using money flow as a gauge to say, how did sellers react here versus buyers over here? My gosh, it's equivalent to the price, which gives according to the people that trade money flow, they'll look at it. A lot of them will look at this and say, we should at least make it up to those prior highs. So this could be a bit of a flag pattern unfolding. It too, though, if I zoom in, really doesn't have a hold yet. So let's just start a position here as well, close to the 200 range like Apple. But let's do the exact same thing here. I'll put the potential stop about 224-ish and the target to about 245. Okay, 245, just below there, 225, 245. So let's go back into this level. And what I'll do is I'll right click, buy custom with an OCO bracket. Let's keep that bracket set where it's at. I'm going to go 25 there. What on earth did I do? All right, 25. There we go. As long as you get that top one set, you're okay as long as you've got the orders locked, right? Scoot on over. Let's go to a GTC. That's just out of habit that I do that, you guys. We can look at this again. In fact, I don't want to really skip any steps here at all. Here's our move to the ups. Look again, move to the upside. If we get a similar type move, if you wanted to use this, it puts us close to that 250. I'm going to say 249. Oh, I think we're just about right on it there. But it's about $1 below that 250. Of course, you can always adjust it later, but that is the target of at least that flag over here. So let's highlight this, 249. Again, that is our upside limit target. And then 225. If I get that to go, 225, I think it was a little bit lower than that. If we were looking at closing below that level, I'll say 224-ish. There's a lot of different methods. I want to dive into those methods later with you. Right now, I just want to highlight some of the movers out here that could help to lift the markets higher as we might be rallying into a year end if in fact we're looking at a flag pattern towards the end of the year. Our next one is going to be Google. Before I do that, I just want to show you the strength that Google has shown over a weekly time frame. Really, really strong, really powerful. And that's not showing any weakening, at least in terms of this sort of flag pattern that we're getting right here. Again, not a close above the high, the low day, but what you are getting is this really quite strong, money flow has been going up really sharply with prices. A little consolidation here, which is okay to a lot of traders. They look at that. Notice down here, volume really dipping as you're in this consolidation mode, but that might just tell traders that there just might be fewer sellers coming in. Where could where could support come in? Support could come in right in this high range. It could also come in right over well closer to that level. There's a little bit of a gap. You guys see it? There's a gap trade right there. So very, very close though. You broke above one of these big levels. It could consolidate there for a little bit, but question is, will it rally? We're starting these off very, very small with just 25 shares in case it does go below a certain range here. We can we could just exit with a smaller amount that's initially in. In this case, we're not going with the 100, right? It's expensive as well. Instead, we're saying, just give me a quarter of that and let me confirm the rest. Let's get a hold. Let's get a breakout above a high range or a trade above a trend line, whatever the case is here. So let's go ahead and do this as well. Okay, so I'm going to right click. This is really a trade in the Mag 7 though, quite a bit of it. And I'm going to show you guys a little trick here. In this case, I'm just going to do an adjustment on the chart. 2.5. Oh, can't seem to do too well with that. All right, there we go. I'm going to keep these very close and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Good tail cancel, good to cancel. The limit and the stop. I'm just going to keep them where they are, just $1 up and $1 down. Another way to make these adjustments, confirm and always go through here. I went through a little bit quick on the prior ones, but always be mindful of this. Go ahead and just take a look at the order confirmation dialog box for me, okay? Keep a tab on that and make sure everything lines up correctly and click send. And now what I'm going to do is go into the charts, and you might need to see this on a very, very short-term time frame like this. This is what I've got set up, and I was going to set this up, as to a higher level for the potential target, drag and drop, and then below this level right there. See that? I'm just dragging and dropping these below the point. We can always drag and drop them in other fashions too, but this is a good way to see it intraday. Just showing you guys some of the things that we can do on this. By the way, this one to the upside, we got to pull this guy up a little bit higher. If this was a target, we might be looking at something like higher. I'm just kind of eyeballing it at this point in time. But when you go through and you look at these, one key thing for sure, just make sure that you look at the confirmation dialog box on any of these types of trades like we've done over here with Amazon. You put these in, you set them up, whatever those bracket order levels are, always go in here and just make sure that what you're seeing down here is exactly what you're getting up here. Yeah, there's been times where I've had a wrong order in. Haven't done that for a long, long time because I'm used to looking at that dialog box, but very, very helpful technique. Okay, last thing, just as a quick note, as a comparison, look over here. Our top 3 in alphabetical order actually were the best performers down here. You can see Meta, trend down. Microsoft, trend down. Lower high, lower low. Tesla, sideways, but still the possibility of a smaller short-term flag developing. NVIDIA breaking a new low, and, well, that was the big one. But you can see, generally speaking, this is a combination of all 3. Hope you guys got use out of this. Be sure, if you did like what we had today, smash that like button. It lets me know that you guys found these sorts of discussions useful. But keeping an eye on the Mag 7 here, the one we just created, could be very, very helpful when determining if the market itself might do that year-end rally. And what do we get? Do we start to see stocks, hit those stop levels, or do we start to see the trend start to unfold into a flag pattern? Those Mag 7s could play a key role in that. They're also flagging as well. So they're very much tied in to what we're seeing in a lot of respects, folks. Just one little quick note over here, and we'll wrap on that. But I was going to say that actually, yeah, be sure and give us a follow on X. Ben Watson, Mike CS, Mike Fairborn CS, and join our Trader Talks channel. By the way, if you are interested in any of the bear flags that we've got set up previously, I did do a class in ThinkScript, which, by the way, those aren't guaranteed for timeliness or accuracy, but that was on Thursday of last week. It was basically a kablode, and that is the ThinkScript class on Thursdays. All right, everybody. Well, on that note, have a fantastic rest of the day. And thank you so much, Ben, for your help. Thanks to our production crew as well. See you guys next time.